It all started back in 2019 when I was around 12 or 13. My dad had custody of me and I could only visit my mom at her parents' house, my grandparents. Their house was on a steep driveway which led to a small road that connected to a highway. I would often ride my bike up and down this road, enjoying the solitude and the fresh air, especially on Sundays after church. It was around 2 p.m. one Sunday when something happened that I'll never forget. I was riding my bike back up the driveway just like I had countless times before, but this time something was different. In the distance, a few hundred feet away, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. I thought it was a dog, but then I realized it was standing up. It was too tall, at least 6 feet, and looked like a man, but something wasn't right. The figure was all white, a silhouette in what seemed like a long white coat, standing motionless in the middle of the road. I stopped my bike trying to get a better look. The figure didn't move at first, but then, without warning, it disappeared. Just vanished. One moment it was standing there, and the next, it crouched down and was gone, hidden behind a slight curve in the road. I couldn't see it anymore. I was confused, but I didn't think much about it at the time. I just went back to my grandparents' house, shook it off, and went on with my day. But something about that sighting stayed with me. Fast forward to August 2021, my 15th birthday. I had just gotten my driver's license, and to celebrate, I hung out with one of my friends. We didn't do anything special, just talked, caught up on life, and decided to head outside for a walk around a nearby park. The park was next to his parents' apartment complex, and part of the trail led into a section of woods that circled around a small, man-made lake. It was around 5 p.m. when we approached the wooded area. As we got closer, something caught my eye. There, standing in the trees, was the same figure I had seen years ago. The same tall, white silhouette of a man just standing there, staring into the distance. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. My friend saw it too, and we both stood there, unsure of what to do. Then, it did something even stranger. The figure moved behind a tree as if it was trying to hide. But when it passed behind the tree, it didn't emerge from the other side. It just disappeared. There was no way it could have moved that quickly, and we should have been able to see it on the other side of the tree, but it was gone, like it had just vanished into thin air. We were both terrified. We didn't say a word to each other, just turned around and left as quickly as we could, heading back to his apartment. We stayed up all night talking about what we had seen, but neither of us could explain it. We were both shaken, but we never spoke about it again. It felt too surreal. Now here we are, 2025, I'm 17. Things have changed. My dad remarried, and we moved about 45 minutes away from my grandparents' house. It was late one night, probably around 11 p.m., when I woke up to the sound of rustling outside my window. At first, I thought it was just a bear or some other animal since we lived in a wooded area prone to wildlife, but the noise kept going. I felt uneasy, so I pulled the curtains back to check. The rustling stopped. I should have just gone back to sleep, but something made me look again. I couldn't believe what I saw. Standing outside in the woods behind our house was the same figure. That same tall, white silhouette. A man, maybe middle-aged, wearing what looked like a white coat, completely still, just staring into the trees. I almost froze in place, my heart racing. This was the third time in my life that I had seen this thing. My mind was racing, my body paralyzed by fear. I ran to wake my parents, but by the time they got outside, the figure was gone. Disappeared like it always did. I don't know what to think anymore. I've seen it 3 times in my life now. It's followed me from my grandparents' house to my dad's new place. It moves so fast it can disappear in seconds, and it's always white. Not like a person in normal clothing, but like something unnatural. Should I call the police? Should I file a report about this figure that's been following me around for years? Part of me thinks it's some kind of prank, or maybe I'm just losing my mind, but I don't know. I've never had any mental issues, just ADHD and maybe some anxiety, but this feels real. Too real. This thing, whatever it is, it's been with me for almost half my life, and I need to know what it is. I just need someone to tell me if anyone else has ever seen something like this. It was the summer of 2021, a time when we would often walk down to the local school, killing time and enjoying the warm days. But one afternoon, something happened that none of us could explain, something that would haunt us for years. It started with 2 of my friends. They were walking ahead of the group when they stopped dead in their tracks. Without warning, they bolted, running back toward us, their faces pale with fear. They didn't say much at first, but I could tell something had terrified them. They wouldn't describe it, not right away. Whatever it was, they were too shaken up to explain. The next summer, in 2022, we were back in the same area, and the 2 of them saw it again. This time, it was lurking behind some bushes, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. One of my friends, usually tough and unshakable, had a deep scratch running down his back, his face a mix of fear and disbelief. They were both pointing, yelling, panicking. Something was chasing them and it wasn't human. We ran. There was no question about it. Even though I couldn't see it myself, I felt the fear radiating off my friends. The creature, whatever it was real to them, and whatever it had done to my friend had left a mark physically and mentally. A few months later, one of them drew a picture for me. What he described and sketched was something that still sends chills down my spine. It had horns, a solid black body, and it could stand on two legs like a man. Its face was wolf-like, but it had glowing white eyes. In the daylight, it would watch from the shadows, lurking just beyond the trees. This wasn't the only strange encounter. One day, my friend's brother casually mentioned that he had seen a creature in the forest near our neighborhood, a cougar with a black body and horns. We exchanged looks, both of us thinking the same thing. Could it be the same thing? He didn't seem to react much to his brother's story, but we were both rattled. Even now, one of my friends still sees it. He reacts with fear, his eyes darting nervously when the subject comes up. That creature hasn't left his mind, and I don't think it ever will. I'll never forget the night I heard it, the sound of a man yelling from the forest, a wild, unhinged scream that echoed through the trees. The worst part? The forest is right there, just across the street from my house and behind the house on the opposite side. I went to check it out one evening, but when I got close, there was nothing. No creature, no sounds, just the feeling of dread that hung in the air like a thick fog. I still can't shake that feeling. Even though nothing ever appears when I go to check the area, the unease lingers, thick and oppressive. I'm not going to stop you from sharing this story. It's short, but it's real. Whatever that creature was, it's still out there somewhere, and I can't shake the feeling that it's watching, waiting. I don't usually post on Reddit, and this is my first time sharing something like this. But as I was scrolling through this subreddit, a story reminded me of something that happened a while ago. It wasn't really scary, but the situation still doesn't make sense to me, and I feel like I need to talk about it. So, I'm 23 now, but this happened about 8 years ago when I was studying at a language school in Dublin, Ireland. My friends and I were there for a 2-week program, and one day we took a trip to a nearby fishing town. I honestly don't remember the name of it, but I'll never forget what happened that day. It was the weekend, and there was some local festival or holiday underway because the streets were packed. The whole town was buzzing with activity. We arrived with our group, had a brief tour, and then were given some free time. I was with 3 friends, Miles, his sister Mary, and our mutual friend Anne. We decided to split into pairs. Miles and I would do the guy stuff and the girls would go off on their own. Miles and I explored the town, grabbed some food, bumped into some people from our bus, bought souvenirs, the usual. Time flew by, and before we knew it, we needed to head back to the bus. We'd agreed to meet up with the girls in front of a cafe. It had a light blue facade that stood out, so it was easy to find. As we approached, we realized we were on the opposite side of the street and needed to cross. That's when I got a call from Anne. She asked where we were, and I told her we just had to cross the street and would be right there. She said she was already waiting and that Mary was inside paying for something. I looked up and saw Anne standing across the street, so I waved. We hung up and started to make our way over. The sidewalk was pretty narrow, and a bus had just dropped a bunch of people off, so the crowd was dense. The nearest crosswalk was just past the bus stop, but Miles and I decided to cut through an alley to avoid the crowd. When we emerged from the alley, things felt different. The street was quieter. It wasn't like there were fewer people, but it was noticeably calmer, just enough to feel off. We didn't think much of it and crossed the street, but when I looked for Anne in front of the cafe, she wasn't there anymore. I pulled out my phone to call her, but there was no signal. Miles checked his, and his didn't work either. We shrugged it off and went inside the cafe to look for them. But when we stepped in, the shop was empty except for the cashier. We asked if Mary had just been there, and the cashier said we were the first people to come inside in a while. We walked up and down the street looking for the girls, but they were nowhere to be found. I started to get worried. We were supposed to meet up 20 minutes ago, and the bus was about to leave. At first, I thought maybe they had run off or were messing with us, but that didn't feel right. We'd already spent 10 minutes looking for them and time was running out. Half joking, I suggested that we go back the way we came and retrace our steps. Miles immediately agreed, like he was thinking the same thing. We rushed back, crossed the street again, and walked through the alley. We ended up right where I'd been when Anne first called me. I checked my phone again, and this time there was signal. I called Anne, and when she answered, she sounded completely normal. She told me nothing had changed, she was still standing in front of the cafe and Mary was still inside paying. We squeezed through the crowd at the bus stop, crossed the street, and sure enough, Anne was standing right there just as she had been before. A few seconds later, Mary came out of the cafe, and they both greeted us casually. But they noticed something was off. We were both looking at each other in disbelief, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Without thinking, Miles and I joked that we had just gone through a time loop. But inside, we both felt the strange weight of what had just occurred. On the way back to Dublin, I decided to check the call times on my phone. The 2 calls to Anne were 2 minutes apart. I didn't even show Miles because I knew he wouldn't be surprised. He'd felt it too, and neither of us ever really talked about it again. To this day, I don't know what happened that day. I can't explain it. We didn't do anything different, just walked through the alley and came back, but somehow, everything had reset. It wasn't like we traveled through time or anything, but it sure felt like we had. The cabin ghost downstairs. It was one of those nights when the air was thick with the kind of tension you can't explain, the kind that sticks with you even when you're not fully sure what happened. My friend, G, and I were sitting on the couch in my apartment, drinks in hand, chatting casually about life when he suddenly went quiet. His eyes looked distant, like he was somewhere else, somewhere darker. I could tell something was bothering him, so I asked him what was wrong. That's when he told me the story. The one that still gives him chills to this day. As he started speaking, I saw his hands tighten around his drink, his knuckles white. I could hear the fear in his voice before he even finished telling me. G had spent the weekend in a cabin in Belleville, Kansas, a quiet place in the middle of nowhere. He was up in the loft, tucked away in a corner, overlooking the kitchen and living room downstairs. His dad was asleep in one of the rooms and his brother was in his own room, probably watching TV. It was late and G was just scrolling through his phone trying to pass the time. That's when he heard it. At first, it was just soft noises, shuffling like cups being moved around, followed by a faint scraping sound. It wasn't his dad, he thought. His dad was asleep. And his brother? No way he'd be up at this hour. Still, curiosity gnawed at him. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the old house creaking. But the sounds kept going, getting louder, like someone was moving things around on the kitchen counter. After a moment of hesitation, G finally worked up the courage to call out, "Dad." The moment he said it, the noises stopped, abruptly. He froze. The kind of stillness that followed made his skin crawl. He couldn't bring himself to look over the railing to the kitchen below. He had this gut feeling that something was down there, something that shouldn't be. The fear built in his chest and he did what anyone would do, he bolted. He ran to his brother's room, but when he opened the door, he found his brother fast asleep, completely unaware of anything happening. There was no one else to turn to. He had to go downstairs. With his heart pounding, G made his way down the stairs, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the empty house. When he reached the bottom of the stairs, he heard it again. A door slammed shut hard. It was a sharp sound, like someone was trying to hide, trying to cover up their presence. His breath caught in his throat, but he pressed on. He moved cautiously, hearing the eerie creak of the floorboards below him, a sound that felt out of place in the quiet of the night. His dad was in his room, disoriented and deep in sleep, and couldn't help him. There was no one around to explain the strange sounds. Before he could gather his thoughts, G made his way into the kitchen. That's when he saw it. The kitchen, which had been empty moments before, was now a mess. Cabinets wide open, drawers ajar, and one glass of water sitting on the counter, a glass he was sure hadn't been there before. Shivers ran down his spine as he tried to make sense of it. Had someone been in the kitchen while he was upstairs? Or worse, had something been lurking in the shadows waiting for him to notice? Confused, unsettled, and terrified, G hurried back upstairs. His heart was still racing, but the worst of it, what would haunt him, was the fact that nothing was ever explained. He couldn't tell anyone, couldn't make sense of the things he'd heard, the things he'd seen. That night, when he got back upstairs and crawled into bed, he didn't sleep a wink. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the presence of whatever had been in that kitchen. The presence that was still there, watching. If these stories send a chill down your spine, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more terrifying tales. You never know when the next horror story might be your own.